Bienvenidos a Inteligencias Lúdicas, me llamo Rodrigo Manique y hablamos desde Brasil. Es nuestro primer intento de subtitular una de las entrevistas al español. Espero que les guste. Discúlpenme algunos errores que hayamos tenido al escribir, al digitar rápidamente. Y espero que les guste. Es nuestra entrevista con Shem Phillips. Welcome. It's good to have you here. And have you been to Brazil before?
No, never, but my friend Fabio keeps telling me to come over all the time. So maybe one day, we'll see.
Hope so. People really like your games here. As you may know, lots of games being released here.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so Shem, your games are very welcome, right? In Brazil, Latin America as well. How long have you been playing board games?
So I grew up playing like the classic kind of games, you know, like Cluedo and cards and Monopoly and all that. So I didn't actually get into the hobby kind of scene till I was like early 20s maybe. So yeah, my main experience is just as any kind of, I guess, normal person, just playing card games, playing Uno and all that kind of stuff as a kid, really. But I always loved playing games. So.
Okay, I found this on the web for her.
So I said my Siri thinks I'm trying to talk to her.
Okay.
It's like, what is that? Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no problem. When did you realize you were more than a gamer? You were actually a game designer.
Oh, that's a tough one. I actually started designing my first game before I even knew about the hobby market at all. So I guess I'm a creative person by nature. So I liked playing games. I wanted to make a game. It just kind of made sense to me, I guess. But it wasn't until I really discovered all these modern games that's when I was like, oh no, I really want to keep making these kind of cool games that are, you know, very popular at the moment.
What was the first game that you designed? And you created your own game publisher. You became a game designer and a publisher at the same time?
Yeah, I did.
What was your first game?
So it was a little family kind of roll and move game called Linwood. So it's I would never publish it now, and probably wouldn't publish most of my early games. But early on, I was doing it just as like a hobby. So I was doing very kind of simple games, lots of card games, that kind of stuff. Things that I knew I could produce on like a low level or low quantities. Yeah.
I think your first released game was back in 2009.
Yes. Yeah.
How was the board game scene back in 2009 in New Zealand compared to now?
So I didn't even know about it. That's the funny part. But after making one of my games, someone heard about it, I guess, and invited me along to a local board game convention. So it's called Wellycon, which is now our biggest one in New Zealand. It gets about 800 people. And it's very focused on just playing games, not so much about selling games and that kind of stuff. But back then it was like maybe 50 to 100 people in a small little community building. That's kind of how I got into the local community. But it's really, really grown, especially in the last like 5 years. It's slowly becoming more and more popular in New Zealand. We're starting to see little articles here and there on the news and in the papers. So it's really cool to see. Really good community though.
No. I thought that you were credited as an artist in several games. You do illustrations. What's your background as an artist?
As an artist, I couldn't draw to save my life, honestly. Even when I was in school, I passed most subjects except for art. I failed art, so. But I do graphic design because I can use a mouse and I can use the keyboard, and I kind of know what I want it to look like. So I kind of taught myself how to do graphic design, got a few tips from my older brother who's an artist, and I'm slowly getting better. But if I'm ever credited as an artist, it's probably just doing graphic design, I think.
Nice.
I cannot draw.
The first time I saw the first time I backed way back in 2000, I don't remember when, Shipwrights, no C.
Yep.
The draft game, right? It was like I couldn't stop playing it at that time. Everything fresh, every game you brought to us, always fresh and your games always blend well with the mechanic and the theme. What can you tell us about your creative process. Where does it start? From the theme, from the mechanics?
It's really changed a lot over the years, I think, because I started out on my own, just doing things my way and kind of learning as I was doing it. And now, a lot more recently, I'm now co-designing a lot more with Sam McDonald and with others. So early on, I mean, even my natural process, I think, is to start with mechanisms. Try and think of something new that hasn't been done, using a card a certain way, using dice a certain way. But now it's often like I'll have a setting. Like I know I'm doing a game in old France, so I've got that setting already there. And then it's like, what is the story we're going to try and tell? What's the name of the game going to be? And then we will try and use mechanisms we've thought up or think of new ones with that kind of theme in mind. But it's not until the mechanisms start to work that we really go, all right, let's really focus on the theme now and think about what else we can add to the game to like kind of increase the theme, increase the feel in the game. So it's kind of a bit of a mix, but mechanisms they're the core of the game for me. So they've got to shine first.
What was your first crowdfunding campaign, and how do you see Kickstarter as a launching platform for a new game designer?
So my first one was actually on a New Zealand-based one called Pledge Me, because we didn't have Kickstarter in New Zealand back then. So I did a little Kickstarter for that one. Not Kickstarter, a little crowdfunding campaign on Pledge Me for that. I think I raised like 6,000, wasn't much. And then when Kickstarter came later that year, that's when I was like, all right, I can do shipwrights finally, because that game needs a lot of artwork, needs to sell a few more units than just 50 copies to my friends. So that was kind of like my reason for doing it. And more recently, we've kind of thought about going away from Kickstarter. We've tried it a few times with some of our expansions and other products, but it's such a good marketing tool. That's the thing. It's not so much about trying to get the money to raise enough money to get your product made. It's about getting the exposure and letting people see your games. So for a first time publisher or designer, it's tricky, I guess, because you've got to stand out. I'm, I guess, privileged that I don't have to like work so hard to get noticed on Kickstarter. So yeah, I honestly don't know how it must be for new ones now, but you've got to do a lot more work than I probably had to do when I started. I think Shipwright said no videos at all on my campaign, so that shows how long ago it was, and it's still funded. So.
Shipwright, it was a card game in a small box.
Yep.
How's the challenge to make games bigger and bigger, but with more components, but make them to fit in a Shipwright's box?
Oh, it's a challenge. Definitely, yeah. I think Paladins was the one that kind of tipped it over the edge that most we have issues with. So I think in the future, if we need to, we're going to make the boxes slightly deeper, but keep that same kind of square shape, just so they look nice on your shelf in a line. But it's definitely a challenge. There's times where I'm like, how the heck would I fit what Sam's thinking of for these playboards into that box? So yeah, good fun.
Going back to the Kickstarter, you had your company in New Zealand. You have a public that you knew. How was the challenge to reach worldwide public and deal with the logistics? Did you have any kind of professional background in the area, since you already had a publisher? How was to upscale your operation to reach the public that you reached?
Well, I had no idea what I was doing. That's the short story. So my kind of plan going into Shipwrights was I'm going to print 500 units. I'm going to send them all to New Zealand. Then I'm going to ship them out to people from New Zealand, which is a stupid idea because it would cost so much money. But that was my plan. I thought if I print 500, I might sell 200 maybe. And then when it kind of blew up and got lots of attention, that's when I had to start thinking on the fly. And fortunately, I had a few people contact me and give me some advice and point me towards certain companies that could help me out with ocean freight and fulfillment. But I was always like a week or two behind where I should have been in that campaign, trying to play catch up. And I made a lot of mistakes and it cost a lot of money, but it was a huge learning experience. And then we were able to build on that for future ones.
Did you expect to reach that broad public that you reached?
No, that's what surprised me. I had no idea that people actually went to Kickstarter to buy games. I thought it was just something that you could put your game on and then send people to go buy. But people actively browse Kickstarter to look at games. So I had no idea that was a thing. So I was very surprised.
Raiders was nominated for the Kennerspiel. Yes, okay, right?
Yep.
The most prestigious award for a board game. Did it surprise you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I never even anticipated that being a thing. I think I just saw on Twitter that it popped up that I got tagged. Suddenly there was like close to 100 notifications for some reason. So that was a huge surprise for me. Was never expecting that to happen. So that's a big effort to Schwertkraft, the German publisher, for making that happen. So just they're kind of pushing the game out there into the German market, because the game has to be released in German. So I couldn't do that by myself. But yeah, it was huge. The kind of the attention that nomination gives you worldwide is massive. Yeah. And
I remember I got my copy in English, right, with the coins and the first time, right, I remember, if I'm not wrong, and I was playing a lot that game because I loved the first the draft, then the second one, the meeple. You have to put it there, and then you do what you have to do, and then you have to pick it from another place, and then came the expansions, and then when it was nominated before the expansion, it was like a cheering for my soccer team, I was cheering up because I was really happy because it was nominated. We played a lot. And now, changing a little bit, there's a game that's a huge box, right? With one of, I love Vikings in the theme, and but I also like giant robots. And now I would like to go a little bit to a game called GKR, Heavy Hitters franchise. When you come and bring new things to the game, such as the turrets, center guns, translucent holo card, holo board tags, support units, how did you enter that game?
That was a lot of fun, because I work about probably an hour's drive from Weta Workshop here in New Zealand. So for those who don't know Weta Workshop, they're the kind of creative team behind all the costuming and armor of like Lord of the Rings trilogies and Ghost in a Shell and various other ones. So they're very talented, huge team of creative people. But they had this game they're working on with Cryptozoic, basically they created this IP of these kind of big sport type giant robot attacking kind of thing, event thing happening. And they brought me on to basically pick my brains for Kickstarter and how they might go about kickstarting their game. And their kind of brief was that they wanted to take this 2-player game that had been developed for them and make it into up to a 4-player game. They wanted to add stretch goals and expansions and all sorts of extra stuff. So I was basically just brought in to think up random ideas, take their ideas and workshop them and craft them, run playtesting sessions and all sorts. So it was actually a lot of fun because I didn't have to worry about being so invested in the design of the game. I could purely come from the outside and just think, how would I make this game better? Yeah, it's really cool. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask you another question as well, but for example, because how can you make that game, that's a huge game, even better? Because with the expansions, there was one that came in the black box as a stretch goal, lots of with new, and then came another one, the Wasteland, Urban Wasteland, another one that you make. Actually, one of them is inside here, and the other one's there because a huge box doesn't fit everything.
Yeah, it's massive.
Okay, very nice. Vai lá, Lepê.
I want to make you a different question then. Your game is released in English. You said you had to publish it in German. We had your games in Brazil in Portuguese. In how many languages have your games been translated? Do you have an idea?
Quickly look at my email. I've got about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, maybe 16 to 20-ish. Not every game is in every language, but Yeah, there's probably about 16 or so different languages that we have various games in. So quite a few.
Which one of your games is your favorite game? If you had to pick one, you could only play one of your games. Which one would you pick to play?
That would probably change week by week, I think. Depends what we're playtesting, because we're doing a lot of playtesting for, what you can see behind me, expansions for Architects and Viscounts and Paladins. So that's a tough one. I guess it depends on who I'm playing with. Raiders always works well with players who maybe are less experienced with modern board games. But if I want a really thinky experience, I might play Paladins or Viscounts. Or maybe, I guess, just the latest prototype that no one knows about is probably the game I want to play the most.
When you're designing a game, all your games, you release the box, then you have several expansions. When is the moment that you think your expansions? You close your package to be a simple game that people can get the basics, and then you develop on the expansions, or you start from the beginning with the ideas that you can go through and then implement.
So we always try to make the base game the best game that we can. So we just basically make that game, and then once we're finished with that, then we'll start thinking about expansions. There's always little things you can do where you kind of future-proof the games, like in Architects, the rightmost column in the guild hall says 5+ rather than just 5, because we're like, well, there may be a 6th player at some point, although we haven't designed the expansion at that point. But I often like to hear feedback from players. So lots of things in Raiders, for example, I heard comments that it was hard to get iron originally. So Hall of Heroes kind of does that a bit by adding in the quests. We can get iron through another way. The other feedback I got was that sometimes the raids didn't feel very exciting. So it's probably more the American kind of style of gamers that wanted a bit more feel and vibe. So Fields of Fame kind of added that with some riskier dice rolls, the ability to like reveal big bosses that you can take down, the Jarls. So yeah, having feedback from players is really important for expansions, because you want to not necessarily fix the base game, but at least address things that they want to see in the game, so that what you're giving them is kind of what they wanted, I guess. Yeah.
Sometimes you hear things that you never even thought about.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Which is your favorite game designer?
Favorite game designer? Sam McDonald. Easy. I get to work with him every day, so that's fun. No, I really admire a lot of games from Vladimir Succi. He's doing a great job with Underwater Cities, and I haven't played his most recent one, but very talented. Alexander Pfister does some great games. There's just so many good designers, and lots of games from various different designers that I really like. But anything that kind of blends mechanisms well, has a lot of depth, but simple rule sets, anything like that I just love.
You still have time to be a game player, since you live in behind you. There's a table where you're working, play and work. You have time to only play.
Just for fun.
Yeah, just for fun. We do like a Thursday night group here locally, so we try and not do prototypes at those events. So we're just playing the new games or playing some old classics. Sam and I, when we're playtesting our games, if we're together for like 6 or 8 hours a day, we might playtest for like 3 or 4 hours, and then we'll just play a couple of games off the shelf just to get inspired and just to kind of cleanse the creativity a bit, because you're so busy trying to think about things that we can just chill and just enjoy a game that we want to play. So I still get to play quite a bit. Yeah.
If I may, what games are you currently working on? Do you have any plans?
So behind me is an expansion for Architects. I'm about to do some solo testing for that one. So that's the Works of Wonder plus Age of Artisans. I'm going to try both together. We've got an expansion for Viscounts that we're working on. It'll probably be Kickstarter towards the end of the year. We have Circadian's Chaos Order, which is a new game that Sam's working on with the designer Zach from Italy. So I'm actually designing that one, just helping with the product design and the development a bit. I have a solo game that I'm working on, which is solo only. So that may be a release next year. So that's kind of fun. It's in the same kind of world or aesthetic as Razor, Scythia, and Hadrian's Wall. So the idea is to make this kind of non-linear, resettable, not legacy, but kind of campaign style game, which just kind of feels a bit more like a co-op, but it's solo. So that's quite fun. And I've got a few other bits and pieces in the works. We've already designed the first game in the South trilogy, and now we're brainstorming ideas for like the second and third game. So keeping quite busy.
Whoa, I'm really anxious to see that one, the solo as well. And
Cool.
this one, oh my goodness. My wife almost kills me when I take all her pawns and bring, and
Yeah.
What game would you like to have created?
Probably Underwater Cities or Great Western Trail. I think those games are just fantastic. I would have published them in a heartbeat.
Me and Rodrigo, we have a series that we call games that fits in your pocket, or because they are small, or because they have a low price tag. Which three games that fits in your pocket would you recommend?
Sprawlopolis by Button Shy Games, very good. Love Letter, obviously, and maybe Coup. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Nice. Wow. Very fast. Very cool. And we're really happy to have you here. I will be translating to Portuguese and then Spanish as well. Do you have any words for our Brazilian gamers and people who watch the channel?
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks so much for your support. It's just it still kind of blows my mind that people across the Pacific are still, the other island far, far away are playing our games. It's crazy to think that, I'm just making these little games in my house in little small New Zealand, and they're getting played around the world. So thank you for your support. It just means so much to me, really.
Shem, I would like to thank you very much for your time with us and for bringing such nice, cool games.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure, and you were a very delightful person to talk to. Although the accent is a little bit different, you speak slowly, and it was a very, very good time to spend with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bueno, este fue Shem Phillips. Espero que les haya gustado y nos vemos en otra entrevista en breve.